What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, yesterday we had a surprising release, but one that we kind of saw coming. However, the end product is pretty awesome, and it also brings up the question as to what could be next for this franchise. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Metroid Prime 4, as there's a new report that's been circulating that I wanted to weigh in on, and we'll also be talking about Nintendo and their plans to upgrade, plans that they already made, but also shows how serious they're going to be when it comes to game development for next generation. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure to hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Atlas Fallen. Now, this game is currently released and reviews went live the other day. And this is a game we'd kind of been keeping an eye on, as they hadn't really shown off gameplay necessarily on the lead up to its release. And then finally they showed snippets, and now we have the game with its reviews, and you can see this posted up over on Metacritic. Currently sitting at a 65. That's on the PlayStation 5 that has the most reviews at 39. And, well, the split, 8 positive, 29 mixed, and 2 negative. The highest review, I believe, is from Player 2 with an 83. And then Gaming Nexus with a 75. Gaming Nexus says that Atlas Fallen might not make any Game of the Year list, but its inventive, refreshing combat is worth checking out. On the flip side, Games Hub gives it a 40, saying a moment like that doesn't exist for games combat, and when lackluster combat makes up the bulk of Atlas Fallen's loop, it makes it that much harder to work up the motivation to continue exploring everything else the world has to offer. So yeah, not the best reviews for Atlas Fallen. Also, it comes at a time where there's a lot of focus currently on Baldur's Gate 3, so this might be a title that I check out down the road when it's fallen in price a bit, just to kind of add to the collection and see exactly what Atlas Fallen had in store for us, just maybe at like the $20 price tag. Also, over the weekend with EVO, we did have a new trailer for Fatal Fury, and this is a game that got people very, very excited, because it's been a long time since we had a Fatal Fury game. That was, what, Mark of the Wolves? This is back at the 99, 2000 or so. I remember that game on the Dreamcast specifically, but here's the new trailer that was posted up, and visually, I do like what they're going for here. This is Fatal Fury City of the Wolves. I think it looks very clean, and obviously it's going to work into being a very smooth playing fighting game, but unfortunately, we still don't have any kind of release date, release window. Don't have any kind of platforms. I assume it's going to go to as many platforms as possible, but it still feels like we're a ways off from this game coming out, or even this game having a full reveal, as this was kind of like snippets of in-game visuals, I think, just to give us an idea as to the direction for the graphics in-game. But yeah, I'm excited to see more about Fatal Fury, and I'm not even a really big fighting game person. I just have a lot of fond memories of the series from back in the day. Oh, and we did get a new update for the PlayStation 5 with Sony releasing it, along with the patch notes for it, which we can see here. And this is for update 23.01-07.61.00.00. It rolls right off the tongue. This system software update improves system performance. That's about it. Not much else here, and I think they're just laying the groundwork for a larger update that's coming down the road. This one, though, coming in at 1.15 gigabytes. Now, people are looking towards Dolby Atmos support being added, as well as other accessibility options, and I feel like we're just seeing them, again, laying the groundwork for that eventual update down the road. But you would need this to play online, so I guess go ahead and get your PS5 updated. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Metroid Prime 4, because there is an incredible amount of anticipation for this game as we approach what we assume to be its grand re-reveal. Although, did we ever really have it revealed? We had a logo, right? It was kind of animated, wasn't it? We haven't seen the game itself, though. We don't know the direction that Retro is taking this title in, and there are even questions around how it's going to perform on the current Switch, as well. It's a bit older now than it was when it first got revealed in 2017. The Switch is definitely getting pushed a bit by current games that are coming out on it, even from Nintendo's top talent with something like Tears of the Kingdom. Well, interestingly enough, on Xbox Era podcast, there were new details that were put out there from Nick over on the podcast, and this we can see over on Gaming Bolt, who did transcribe some of this, saying, in addition to the game looking visually unbelievable, said source also claims that Metroid Prime 4 will also feature big, massive areas. Okay, Baker says that though he doesn't believe the game is going to be open world, it will have significantly larger areas than previous titles in the series. Apparently the person or the source that had this information, had seen the game, was comparing it to Halo Infinite, specifically that it reminded them of how big and open the environment was, not necessarily that it's open world. Really trying to figure this out, exactly what they're getting at. I feel like they're more or less saying there's just a lot of area to cover in some of these zones that you go to in Metroid Prime 4, and I don't necessarily think that Metroid Prime 4 has to be an open world. To me, not every game in general has to be an open world style game, and we just got one that was very, very large in Tears of the Kingdom. And when I think of Metroid Prime, I more or less think of that, the Metroidvania setup, but essentially going from point to point and unlocking new areas and sure, backtracking, but also getting abilities that will enable you to get further in the game, and kind of trying to put that into an open world can be a little more difficult when you can't necessarily control the flow of the character. In this instance, though, if you consider Metroid Prime Remastered, that just came out earlier this year, there are certain areas you go into and all of a sudden there's no ceiling or anything. You're outside and you can look around and it feels much larger than some of those corridors that you're walking around in, whether it's for puzzles or exploration or whatnot there. So that's sort of what I'm thinking is we're going to have areas in Metroid Prime 4 that are just massive, and you look around, it feels very, very open and short, comparable somewhat to Halo Infinite, but not on the scale of, in Halo Infinite, you can get in a Warthog and drive from one end of the map to the other uninterrupted. As for the part about Metroid Prime 4 looking visually unbelievable, yeah, I would say that's probably correct, especially if you look at Metroid Prime Remastered, there are people who are playing through that, and I see it online, they said this is the best I've seen in terms of visuals on the Switch, and they put it up there alongside of what I think is the best looking game still on the platform, and that's Luigi's Mansion 3. Although Metroid Prime Remastered does run at 60 frames per second along with those really good looking visuals. So that's still kind of the question I have for Retro when it comes to Metroid Prime 4. If they can still blow us away with the graphics while maintaining 60 frames per second, because I do think that's important for a first-person shooter adventure game in the Metroid Prime series. And I will say, based on what they did with Metroid Prime Remastered, I have a lot of confidence that Retro will pull it off. And I'm also hoping that, let's say this game doesn't come out till like second half of 2024, that they're also working maybe for a patch so that this ends up being a cross-gen game and could take advantage of Nintendo's next generation device that should be a good bit more powerful, we'll say, than the current Switch. Because there's one thing Retro's really good at, it's getting a lot out of any hardware they work on. So think about them being there at launch ready to go with Metroid Prime 4 on the next system. Next up, let's talk about a surprise drop yesterday, although we had kind of discussed this previously when it went up on the ratings boards, and that's Quake 2 Remastered. And this is exciting stuff because there's a lot that went into this game, and MVG is in the credits. So hey, shout out to Modern Vintage Gamer there, helping to get Quake 2 out the door and ready for release to go alongside of Quakecon. Now, there is a full trailer that is out. You can see that here. And this game did drop immediately into Game Pass. So go check it out there. If you're already subscribed, you can pick up Quake 2 and try it out, whether it's for the first time or maybe you're reliving the old days from 1997. But what's interesting here is I mentioned a lot of work that went into it. Well, it has high definition widescreen support, enhanced models, improved enemy animations and gore, enhanced cinematics, anti-aliasing, depth of field, up to 4K 120 FPS support. And there's also additional content. So it has the original mission packs, The Reckoning and Ground Zero, and an all-new expansion called Call of the Machine. And this has 28 campaign levels, a new multiplayer deathmatch map, and a free version of Quake 2 64. By the way, this is all $10, or again, you can just grab it on Game Pass. The other thing that I thought was pretty interesting, it has crossplay, which is great. So you can go online, play against other people on all the different platforms, which obviously includes PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series, PS4, the Switch. But if you have an Xbox Series S and X, It supports 8-player local split-screen co-op, and I saw MVG post a screenshot of it. Looks absolutely ridiculous to have that many people on one screen, but yeah, you can do it. Oh, and if you're someone who wants to get it physically, go check out Limited Run Games, as they did reveal that they have a special edition of Quake 2 that contains a steelbook, poster, briefing documents, set of dog tags, a throwback 2-piece collector's box, and then they have like an Ultimate Strong edition as well. So there's a lot going on over there if you wanted to have it physically. But now I'm kind of thinking, okay, we had Quake 1 get its remastered, Quake 2 remaster. Does that mean that Quake 3 is coming up next? Because that would be an incredibly hype announcement for them to say, yeah, Quake 3 Arena coming back, crossplay, all these different things, new content. Because if you remember back in the day, I remember on the Dreamcast specifically, the online for that was incredible. And I think it'd be great to bring it back to current consoles with crossplay, 4K support, 120 FPS. There's a lot of fun stuff they could do there. And it kind of feels like that would be the trend, right? But I guess for now, Quake 2 is out there. Again, you can pick it up on Game Pass or for $10. And yes, highly recommend checking this one out. And now I'm hoping that the next step is Quake 3. But this is exciting stuff. Either way, go check it out. Again, Game Pass or $10 in other marketplaces. Next up, let's talk about the Famitsu sales charts. These, of course, give us a look at how different games are selling week to week in Japan, as well as the different game consoles. So let's start here with the top 10 for games, with Pikmin 4 still holding strong at the top, only a 32% drop off, coming in at 78,000 units. And based on the number 2 slot being Tears of the Kingdom at 14,600, tells me Pikmin 4 is pretty much poised to stay at the top of this list for a little while now. Then we have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at 3, because why not? Natsuman at 4, Minecraft at 5, Splatoon 3, Nintendo Switch Sports, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Mario Party Superstars, and then Pokemon Scarlet and Violet rounding out the top 10. Unfortunately, it does look like Final Fantasy 16 has fallen out of the top 10, which Square said they have plans to try to push Final Fantasy 16 more and more as they go along, whether that's through discounting the game or having new content or something being added in. But that's just kind of where we are with Final Fantasy now. It's clearly become more popular in the West than it has become in Japan. Moving over to the hardware, the Switch is at the top, 93,210 systems. I mean, what do we need the next system for with Nintendo? They keep selling nearly 100,000 units in Japan. Like this is a consistent thing for them, by the way, which is just incredible stuff. It is going to run down the DS, it looks like, in Japan pretty quickly at this rate. Then we have the PS5 below that, 50,358 systems. The Xbox Series at 3,276. I know they've been doing more and more bundled deals and different things in Japan, for example, with Diablo 4. So maybe that's helping to push Xbox Series systems a bit more in the region. The PS4, 789, and then look at this. Okay, the 3DS, 56 of these have sold. If any of you are in Japan, I need to know, are there just 3DS systems out on store shelves and people are walking around buying? Because you can't find one like in the US or anything when it comes to new systems. So I'm curious how common it is to just come across a 3DS brand new in the box there in Japan. But the big takeaway and story from these sales charts has to be Pikmin 4. It's done very, very well for Nintendo so far, especially in Japan where we see the numbers. And that tells me that most likely we are seeing probably similar success in other regions, and this most likely, I think it's pretty obvious, will go on to become the best-selling Pikmin game in the franchise easily. So we'll hear more about the actual full sales numbers worldwide from Nintendo when they're ready to talk about that a bit more with the investors following this current fiscal quarter, which means it'll be like first week of November or so. So we'll have a little while to wait, but something tells me when they do give us the number for Pikmin 4, should be pretty impressive. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Nintendo's plans to expand and how they've actually been delayed because they want to make the building bigger. Yeah, we can see this posted up by Nintendo Life as they are sorting Nikkei. And if we remember, last year, Nintendo did announce that they were going to have a larger development building that they were going to create after buying land that's next to its Kyoto, Japan headquarters. Originally, this was going to be 12 stories tall, and they were going to complete it by 2027 and have a floor area of 38,000 square meters. but now they're upgrading to more than 13 floors. And according to them, it's to cater to a long-term increase in development personnel. This will also push their plans out a little more 2028 or later, which, if you consider the fact that we think their next generation system would launch maybe holiday 2024, 2028 or so, that would be right in the middle of that generation when, yeah, they're probably going to be all hands on deck and pushing heavily for big time games coming out. And if you think about how much more complex games are getting as we go forward, yeah, they probably need more and more buildings to house the different developers to create these games, especially if they're making this big push to 4K as we see these games become more complex just from mechanics. I mean, look at Tears of the Kingdom, the amount of effort that went in to make sure that game just wouldn't break, the physics and all the different ways you can manipulate the world around you. And then on top of that, you're also thinking about 4K and all the texture work and different things that go into it for the small details. Yeah, it's just going to continue to get harder and harder to make these games. In that case, yeah, you got to bring in more and more developers and have apparently 13 story plus buildings ready to go. So this is something that's still a ways off, 2028 or later, but I'm sure we'll be getting updates from Nintendo as we go forward with investors around how the building is going or if they have to upgrade it again. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, have you played Quake 3 before? Look at that, 74% say no, 26% say yes. Wow, there are many people out there who have not experienced the greatness that is Quake 3 multiplayer online. So that seems like there is quite a bit of opportunity out there through word of mouth. You know, Quake 3 coming back, it probably not being a super expensive game, and we see these Quake titles coming out at $10 a piece. Maybe Quake 3 because there would be a bit more going into it. Maybe that'd be 15, but that's still like impulse buy territory, and it, I assume, would go into Game Pass day one. Seems like that would be an awesome reveal, and it'd be a really, really exciting time online to have that come back to all these different platforms, crossplay, the whole thing. So I'm hoping that is an eventual reality, but I guess we'll look towards the next Quakecon to see if we get ratings popping up for Quake 3 Arena. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Mega, who says, John gets his excuse for not playing Pokemon TCG shot down by a comment. So what does he do? Double down the power creep of the game. Bro, just say you don't want to play with trading cards and move on. I don't want to play with trading cards. I've seen the rabbit hole that people go down with these cards where they have totes and totes of these common cards and they're just trying to pull this one rare card and there's all these booster boxes coming through and all the money that goes thrown in. I mean, I talk about GameCube collecting being expensive. The Pokemon trading card game, collecting for that, whole other world, really. And half the time I talk to people who are buying these cards, they're not even using them to play the game. They just want to collect them. That's fine. But yeah, I'm good. I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole. I'll stick to my GameCube collecting and save my money. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Whereas the talk around Metroid Prime 4, what are your expectations for this game as we hopefully get closer and closer to a re-reveal with this thing, maybe at the next Nintendo Direct or to kick off 2024. And then also, what about Quake 2 getting this awesome remaster, the Shadow Drop? Did you check it out? And what are your thoughts on it? Thanks guys for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time for Newswave.